You're listening to the Dudes and Dads Podcast, a show dedicated to helping men be better dudes and dads by building community through meaningful conversation and storytelling. And now, here are your hosts, Joel DeMott and Andy Lehman.
Chester T. Lehman, hello.
Oops, I'm bad at this today. I can't even get us both on video. This is how bad I am today.
You are here though. I can see you right across from me.
All right, hold on. There we go.
You're looking.
I got it.
You're looking wonderful. Hey, so hi Andy. Hi.
Hey Joel.
Hi. Hey everybody. Welcome to the Dudes and Dads Podcast. Glad to have each and every one of you here with us as we looking forward to a fun conversation. Lots of moving pieces tonight. Andy is navigating a whole plethora of technical wizardry. If we can put it that way, because that's the way I should put it, because it's accurate. We have our friend and Dudes and Dads Podcast alumna, whatever.
Not alumna.
Not alumna, alumni. Greg Neymayer is with us in studio. Hi, Greg.
Hello, guys.
Hi.
I'm trying. I'm really messing it up today.
And as always, Andrew is right across the table. He's dialing in the remote employees. Listen to me. Our remote guests.
There we go.
Yes,
those guys.
And making sure that they are.
I'm trying to get them on. If you guys want to talk, real quick.
Perfect.
And yes,
I'll talk. You punch your buttons, and we'll see what happens. So first of all, the conversation tonight, and we're super looking forward to this, is a recap of our recent trip out to the Grand Tetons.
Yes, get that French inflection on
It needs to sound
there.
French. It needs to sound French and slightly suspicious. Because,
Recording stopped.
we had a really great experience out west, and the thing, and we had had a conversation with Greg prior of talking about kind of the elements of wonder and awe, and kind of the experience of going out into the wilderness and doing this all, with also in the context of this group that we were putting together.
Mm-hmm.
16 total of us.
There was 17 of us. There was 2, so there's myself and a co-guide, and then 15 of you.
Wonderful. And what an experience it was. Greg tried, he does his best to give us the essential details of the trip and give us an outline of what we're going to be looking at. But you really can't know.
You cannot know.
Until you go.
There's definitely meant to be some mystery to it.
Oh, boy, oh, boy.
Some surprises along the way.
And I want to say, yes, indeed, mystery, and some things that I wish had remained a mystery that have been that were uncovered or whatever brought to the surface. But no, and I think I just absolutely want to say what a joy the trip was. What a really amazing experience it was for me in particular, because I was bringing along Josiah, my 13-year-old son. And having the rest of you all sort of
come along on your father-son trip.
Yeah, right. I just invited all these people on my father-son trip. No, that we were just welcomed in and allowed to be a part of the group that was from Clinton Frame, which is really, really awesome experience, a major blessing. Greg, I'm wondering, just to kind of give some context, really what this trip was about. We did 3 hikes and some excursies,
Right.
Annexed trips, little walkabouts, boondoggles, whatever.
Some walkabouts.
Whatever we want to call them. When you're getting us ready to take these, when we're going to take these hikes, that are, the idea is that they're sort of building upon each other a little bit. What is the, because I would argue, and as I've told everybody, we did a beginner's hike, an intermediate hike,
and one that
and then one that I don't have a category for, and there might still be some for those of us that for our friends that are here with us this evening. There might still be some bitterness over over hike number 3. Greg, tell us
Well,
this.
of 15 people who joined us, we got 5 of them to join us.
The rest of them are dead. That's why they're not even alive anymore. No, Greg, talk just as much as there is. Talk to us about the strategy of kind of building into those things, and kind of what you're hoping we experience as we kind of engage in the trip.
Yeah, well, so some people were coming in. Some people had driven in like yourself, so that's the absolute best way of acclimation. You're just taking that slow ascent from Indiana and the Plains states up into northwest Wyoming, where we were going to be camping just about 7,000 feet. So those who had flown in and others who had come in kind of on a shorter, driving in, the big thing is you just want to make sure that we give ourselves some time for acclimation. I mean, acclimation is a huge component. And I think that translates into life too. Sometimes we just want to jump into the deep end, and what we can end up doing is hurting ourselves that way. So what we did was our first hike in was about a 9.5 mile out and back, and relatively flat the entire way. I mean, there's just some up and down, but we don't really go up into any canyons. There's no mountains at all, but it's along the lake shore every time. So we've got String Lake, Lee Lake, Bear Paw Lake, and Trapper Lake that we're
with the
seeing
Tetons there immediately in the background.
Grand, the Grand is kind of down the south range. You got Mount Moran right on top of us the whole way, and you just get this major sense of, oh my goodness, here I am.
Yeah.
And so that kind of awakens this sense of I'm hiking somewhere different now. The bear experience on that trail on the way back, that was exciting for us too.
Yes.
Sharing the trail with the bear and deciding, okay, you can have this trail too, good sir. You go right along your way. We will yield. So that's kind of that, like, hey, whet your appetite. I want to make sure, I mean, as a guide or as somebody who's kind of leading things, I want to see if you're capable of the distance. Because at that point, you really just have altitude and then you have distance there. It's, hey, we're going to do 9 miles and we're going to do it at 7,000 feet. And you just came from roughly 600 feet. I don't know what Indiana is, 600 or 700 feet maybe.
We're at like 720 feet right now.
Okay, because we're 20 feet up in this building.
Because we're on the second floor.
So for what I want to see is, can you even just at this altitude, can you do this distance? And I mean, I think we had a good time with that hike, and it wasn't, I mean, it gets a little sweat going. It gets your juices going, like, oh, okay, I now have fresh air to deal with in my lungs. I'm going to drink water. I'm going to eat healthy. And even that alone was kind of a stretch for some folks. All of a sudden, it was like, man, this is a healthy lifestyle here that I didn't know was something my body is not used to. Then our next hike is... I'm going
to ask you, so our people who are joining us, our guys who joined with us, if you guys have anything to put on this first hike, feel free to speak up. Like, how did it make you feel the very first time that we went on that very first hike?
I felt like, oh, wow, this is pretty simple, I can do this. It's flat. I did get tired faster than back here in flat Indiana. But no, I thought this is doable. Just great to walk along those lakes and look across the lakes and see the wonder of those mountains that just shoot up out of the earth. It's just amazing how that style of mountain is. I think it's really neat. And it's just, it is wonder, because you're just walking, it's like literally boom, it juts up out of the earth, and it's just so different than what we have back here. And so the whole day I was just kind of observing that and just thought, oh wow, this is really wild.
Yeah, you're totally right, Marty. That's the style of the range is called a drop fault mountain range, and so it has no foothills. What it has is just a bunch of these glacial melt lakes at the base. And so it's extremely dramatic. It's a very dramatic kind of landscape to find yourself walking along. And to be on Lee Lake, especially, and String Lake, which are very calm lakes, unless the wind's really whipping, which is difficult at the base there, they're often so still you get those reflective kind of experiences with the photos. And I know a bunch of guys got pictures with, like mountains on top of mountains in these lakes. So I appreciate that you kind of stopped and took that in a bit. Yeah.
Anybody else's thoughts on the first hike?
Yeah, the other thing that made that hike nice was the fact that, like you said, it was kind of easier, kind of along the lake, and so it was pretty heavily traveled, meaning the path was wide enough for folks to walk side by side most of the way. And so that was kind of a nice refresher after being in a van for 28 hours, 26 hours, whatever. Just to just kind of walk side by side with a buddy and just have a lot of conversation. So it was a good intro to the week.
All right, so then moving on to the second hike.
Yeah, so then let's see. So our next hike, what we wanted to do was get a little bit more elevation gain, just see what happens if we've got to climb some hills a little bit more. And so we did the Taggart and Bradley loop, and we did it in the reverse order that is usually recommended. We went counterclockwise on that loop so that we saw the incline right away and climbed up to Bradley over the first 2.5 miles or so. And that one, we found some guys kind of pushing their limits a little bit more there. It was like, oh, this is what it means. Now we did that in the direct exposure. We had the sun right over top of us, and so it was unseasonably warm. I just want everybody to remember and know that, like, I always think of going to the mountains and it's like it's going to be a high of 76 and it's going to be dry air and cool, and we had 90 degrees.
Yeah, it was warm.
It was warm. So we got some elevation gain, saw some more lakes, encountered a lot more bears on that hike than I mean there was more bears on that hike than I think in my previous 2 or 3 years all combined. Less traffic on that hike again, and it narrows out a little bit, and so you've got some steeper. I think we hit some 30% grade on that hike a few times where it's just like, oh, we've got to go up and wind and just mini switchbacks. So seeing, okay, what happens if you have to gain 800, 900 feet over a few miles? What will that feel like? Can you do you have the right footwear? I was really concerned about anybody who was wearing new boots or hadn't prepared for footwear, as far as, if they were going to start developing some blisters after a couple days of just that kind of, okay, we had 6.5 miles and then we had some elevation gain. And I was kind of listening for that more than anything, just as far as like, how were people's footwear holding up and were they feeling it as far as the altitude? Just we only gained again 800 or 900 feet on that, but that's significant when you've been in the van. Like I said, when you were in Indiana 2 days ago.
Right. Or those of you who flew out, because some of them...
Especially if you flew out.
So, Greg, actually, I'll pick on you for this one. Greg or Dave, since you guys were part of the group that flew out. Let's start with Greg. What was that second hike for you, especially since you had flown out and not had the time to acclimate in the car?
I thought I was good with it. I had a great time. I said before, I'm not the fastest hiker, but yeah, I thought it was good. I didn't. I thought I was prepared. I mean, I thought it was pretty good hike. And I actually found the first day harder than the second day. I don't know why, but the first day was harder for me than the second day. Second day I was starting to get in the groove.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I know for me the first day I was starting to cramp. My calves were cramping up, and then after I got used to that, then the rest of the hikes were fine.
You just got used to the cramping.
Well, no, it didn't cramp. My body didn't cramp after that. Okay. Dave, how about yourself? How was that second hike for you?
Well, that was the day that we set back. So
right, so that hike was easy for you.
That was one of his favorite days.
There was. I think I would say. Maybe using Joel's terminology or self-defined, there was a couple of us that joined the Wimp Club, and since Dustin's not here, I can throw him under the bus, and it was him and I leading that way, knowing that our elder bodies were suffering a bit. But yeah, the first day I've anticipated a bit more altitude adjustment. Than I felt. You knew you were there, you knew you were elevated, and you knew you had to work a little more with the oxygen levels, but it was not enough to create headaches and some of those other altitude type of uncomfortableness. So it and maybe it's the awe and the beauty and the wonder that is there that takes your mind away from some of that. But I think Greg did a great job of educating us on the front side, and preaching the hydration and the footwear conversation and all of that, which certainly helped. So
yeah, I was really glad that there was actually, to be perfectly honest, I was really glad that there was you, Dave, and Dusty, and I think, was there one other with you?
Sebastiano on the overnight.
Okay, but that one particular day, I think Ben stuck.
Ben stayed back.
Ben stayed back, and we took him. He had to go to town, so it was our job to get him to town.
Well, the way that we approach the retreat is it needs to be something where you're truly attentive to the needs of your soul, but as much as attentive to the needs of your body, and the opportunity and the recognition that not everybody needs to do everything, but to opt in and opt out as you honestly reflect on the need of your life, the need of your soul, and to take a day, sometimes to just take a day and go like, I'm going to lean into the opportunity to breathe and rest and be in awe and be in wonder here. And I don't need to exert, and I don't need to work and stress my body in order to prove anything to myself or anyone else. But I can do that. And I was very, very glad that there was a few of you who recognized that was the opportunity in front of you and took advantage of that. That truly was meaningful to me.
And I think if there's anybody else listening that would say, boy, I would like to get on that list, or go hang out with Greg and Adam and do something like this in the future. The thing that was attractive was exactly that, was that, hey, there is not a expectation of any type. We anticipate participation, but that definition of participation does not mean 110 miles every day at 110% hiking. There was lots of value, and those three of us, Dustin and Ben and I, we had some really awesome conversation that day. It was very much appreciated. So you're spot on, and that was, Greg laid that out to us at the beginning, and that was very, very attractive to me.
So after that hike, what was our next thing there, Mr. Neymayer?
So that evening, I believe was actually when we went out to visit Old Pat. Then,
right?
Oh yes.
Without spoiling the grandeur of Old Pat for everybody who's not aware, there's a tree in Grand Teton National Park that's kind of been lost to history because of moving a road and different things, but used to be an iconic stopping point for visitors. And we still make a trek out there. I find it almost an annual pilgrimage for myself to go and visit Old Pat. It's referred to as the old patriarch tree. But I think that evening was when we all, and every single one of us, I think that was myself and then the 15 of you. So there were 16 of us that actually made it out to Old Pat. And so that was our evening kind of little walkabout excursus, if you will. Wasn't a full hike. We have to bushwhack, but the destination is much more the point than the journey on that one.
Yeah, and that, again, without divulging all the sacred goodness of that experience. I think something I would just say, because again, having both myself and Josiah out there, that was an opportunity, and I would say this too. It was an opportunity for, I think, a really significant reflection. And I would say this to Dave. I mean, it was something that Dave shared and even directed toward Josiah that included him in that conversation. And I mean, it's something that Josiah is going to remember for the rest of his life. It made a really, really significant impact. And so, yet again, I think, much to Greg's credit, like he has not in a manipulative sort of way, but in a very intentional sort of way, like staging these experiences out and right timing the conversation around what we're experiencing where I think, after a good hike, I don't know, you're more open, and you are tired, but you're more open to just sort of like breathe it all in and just slow yourself down and to reflect and to have good good conversation.
Yeah, I think for me, again, without spoiling old Pat, that's hard to not do, but it was nice to have a conversation, or it was nice to have a hike that was easier but had just as much purpose as the other hikes. For the other hikes, we got to see the grandeur of the mountains and the lakes and all of the beauty that the mountains provide. But this was nice because it wasn't necessarily in the mountains, but it was a nice hike, and then just I'm trying to not
Go
spoil
right
it.
ahead.
No.
Just say
but
whatever
I mean,
you need
just
to,
like
whatever you need to say.
I don't know, the way that you talked about the tree, and then just the time of reflection, because we were able to reflect and we were like silent, and that for me was great, because it was a time to just, no one was talking. There was no one talking. We were just sitting there with God and us and whatever he was speaking to us, and so that was a good time.
Yeah, I find that place is just that particular scene is very meaningful to me. I love introducing others to it and inviting you to have maybe your own moment there. I'll openly say the first time that I made it to that spot, I mean, I made it there with tears in my eyes, just going like, this is, I don't know what's going on right here. I don't know what's happening here, but it was just like this like collision of visual, tangible expression of something mystic almost that I've read about and seen in scripture and seen a value for, but here's this tangible expression of it that has just kind of become an icon of sorts of what we've talked about out there. So I hope that was meaningful to other people as well. If part of the Man Up experience, anyone who wants to do these retreats in the future, we'll go and visit old Pat and we'll talk about it.
Yeah. So after that experience, then we're not really getting ready for the next hike.
Was there anyone who had anything else?
I don't
Greg
know.
Or,
Pat.
David or Greg or Jonathan or Marty. Yeah.
Or even Jason. Jason's online.
Jason's down here.
We forget Jason because his name.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the hike out to Old Pat because it was short, but it was meaningful. Just to see something in this country that's that old, I thought was just really fascinating. If you ever travel overseas, there's a lot more age in those countries, and we don't have that as much here. And just to hear the story of the tree, the age of the tree, it was a very meaningful short time that we had there. And without getting anybody in trouble, it did produce the most enjoyable rock that somebody brought home on that trip.
We're not going to mention any names, right? We won't
Right.
mention your name. I mean, whoever's name. But
Yeah, and the way that Greg set up that hike too, for anyone planning on going on this trip, he didn't take the direct route to see this tree. We went about it in such a way that you get a different perspective on it. And the takeaway from that, everybody was free to take away their own meaning from this experience. My meaning or my takeaway was different from everybody else's. And so it was a neat experience that it was the shared experience, the shared hike out into this open area. But yet it was also very individualized. It was probably one of the moments on this trip that was the most individual for me as well. Me being able to take away something that was just for me. Like Andy said, there was a moment of silence there where I could be reflective on just my own heart situation, whatever was going on.
yeah, so we were originally going to hike up and over, right? There was going to be an overnight hike that we were going to originally hike up and over, and the mountain, and then camp to a new campsite. You had the option to do that, and those who wanted to do that could do that. But then with the previous week, there was some smoke, and you said, me as an experienced hiker can't even do that, so I'm not taking you guys up there, which I appreciated that. I mean, I would have loved to do it, but I appreciated it.
I felt like when Greg was explaining that all to us, there was this collective sense of relief, and by the way, false relief. I just want to be clear. We were relieved that we were not going to have to go through that experience, and little did we know that we were not off the hook. But
right. But yes, we ended up. My video went away. So yes, we ended up hiking, and we there's our video. Again, technology. So we ended up not doing that, but we all drove to the second campsite.
Yep.
And then from there, we went ahead and those who wanted to do the overnight hike could do that. And so we set out on a journey, and Greg.
And then what happened, Greg? Tell me what happened.
So what we did was we broke camp like you're supposed to. We broke camp. We packed up everything that, what was it, Saturday morning? I think it was. Saturday morning. And we had a nice, lovely drive.
Oh, it's a great
down
drive.
And around the
Great
mountain.
drive.
So rather than take the pass, we took the scenic route. So you saw the Palisades reservoir, you saw the lake. You got to drive through some of the most incredible mountain back roads. Just some of the most beautiful, beautiful roads that Idaho and Wyoming have to offer collectively, in that Caribou Targhee National Forest coming in and out of everything. We made it to so rather than spend all of our time exclusively in the national park boundaries, what I really enjoy doing is getting outside of the park and getting into the designated wilderness area. So we were in a national forest campground, which is the Teton Canyon Campground's beautiful campground back in Teton Canyon, one of the oldest campgrounds in the area. I mean, there are pictures of 130, 140 years ago of people with their covered wagons camping in those same spots that we were, and taking the same hikes up the canyon. And so the Teton Creek comes down the canyon during the June, July. That creek is rushing. It is a massive, massive river that can be actually pretty formidable to cross. So we went up Teton Canyon, and the first 2.5 miles are easy going. I mean, what was it, 250, maybe 350 foot of elevation gain? Jason might know. And then you got to come to this fork in the road. And do you want to take Wilderness or National Forest Trail number 27, or do you want to take National Forest Trail number 28? Now, I'm just going to remind you, I was there to take Road 27. We were going to go 27.
Good old, lucky, beautiful, more mildish 27.
27 was the one I had taken before. But the sign.
And who are we?
Right.
To deviate from Greg's known route? Who are we?
The sign did issue. So we don't have all of these individuals with us today, but the sign threw down a challenge of sorts. The sign threw down a gauntlet, and it just said Devil's Staircase.
Yeah.
Right, which was it was a challenge, like you said.
Yeah.
And there was a collective, do we really want to? And then there was, I thought it was very inspiring to me personally. Like, as someone who was like, I would rather do Route 27 here. Like, that'll be great. But there was this collective rallying of, no, we want to do, like, we want to suffer. Like,
I don't know that that's what, I'm not sure that that's actually what we said. But we said,
I'm so glad that you heard that,
That's
Greg.
the way I heard it.
Right. That's so great.
And so we then opted for Route 28 and went and veered then south to go towards the Devil's Staircase. And 3.5 miles later, we had experienced all that it had to offer.
Okay.
Go
up
ahead.
another 2,500 feet.
So I want to hear from each of you that were on Devil's Staircase. I want to start with Greg. As you are climbing Devil's Staircase. What is going, and I'll ask each of you this, what is going through your mind? What are the words? What is the conversation that is internal to you as you are heading up that elevation?
I was having a complete high. I was total loving every minute of it. I wanted to take that route, and I wanted to see what it had in store for me. And so what was going through my mind was a couple things. One, don't quit, and just keep going one step at a time. Like I've said before, I'm not a fast hiker. That's not who I am, but I'm a plugger, and that fit my style real well. And I just kept going. And I felt like I was getting stronger as the day as we went up. And that was one of the highlights of the trip for me, that hike along with old Pat. So I was just with sheer awe and wonder in that moment, being in that spot, being able to push myself that way. So I was having a great time. I loved it. Glad we made that decision. The other thing that was going through my mind is, and I shared this at old Pat, there's a chorus that is near and dear to me, and it's the chorus of I Will Call Upon the Lord. And I sing that often on the trail. I probably sang that chorus more often on that trail, because when you're faced with adversity, when you're faced with challenges, am I going to call upon the Lord? And so while I was facing this physical challenge in front of me, I called upon the Lord. And so that was it was a high for me. And I don't use that pun lightly, that we were on a mountain. But I was drinking it all in. I had a great time.
That's awesome. Marty, what was going through your brain?
Well, most of what Greg said, but probably first of all, it was like, what the hell am I doing on here? So it was steep.
Yeah.
And it was kicking my butt, and I like to be challenged. I like to be in better shape when I'm challenged. But yeah, I was standing there. I think we were going, I'm not sure who was leading, but we made it like 300 feet, I think. And I stood there and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. It was amazing just in the view. It was amazing in the challenge and how hard it was. I mean, these first few days that we talked about hiking, we were walking without packs. And so it was like, oh, this is a piece of cake. And now we throw 15, 20 pounds on our back. And now we're walking on a 65 degree incline. And there's just a lot of different feelings and aspects and pains and highs too. But no, it was enjoyable. It's kind of stuff that I like to do. I wish my body could do it a bit more, but yeah, I would agree with a lot of what Greg said on that.
Yeah. Jason, how about you, man?
Well, I'm thinking, let's just get this over with at the beginning. Let's just go ahead and tackle all the elevation gain within a few miles and then just be done. And I heard the word a few times, a mistake. I never really thought it was a mistake. I thought it was actually a happy little accident. So I thought it was really nice. And it was grueling. It was challenging. Actually had to take some time to just be aware of your body while you're doing it. And, just that awareness of where am I at rather than just getting busy and trying to go fast and hard.
Yeah.
So,
that was
great.
Same thing for me. I think it was my experience of it was this. So there was two different groups. Or three different we kind of all strung out because we all have different abilities.
Hike at different paces.
Those of you who show off a lot were way ahead of us, like a quarter mile ahead of us. And I remember, look, I just got to the top. I think I was with Ian, and we both just made it to the top of Devil's Staircase. And I hear Greg Neymayer shouting, "You're on the wrong path." And I'm like, oh no, are you kidding me? Like, no, we're not. Like, I'm at the top. Yeah. I'm not coming back down there because this is ridiculous. I'm not going back down there. And so I'm trying to shout and scream to the people in front of us. I have a whistle, and so I'm like whistling and trying to get their attention and saying, hey, you guys are on the wrong path too. And they started coming back, and then was like, I'm still in my mind refusing to walk back down because I'm like, I'm not walking back down this thing to have Greg decide we're coming back up. And so I stayed there. And the next thing I know, you guys start coming to us. And what ensued was, I do really think that God had us in the right spot. Like, yes, it was tough, and it added to our total length of the trip, or of that nightly trip or whatever. But the campsite and just the experience before that even was amazing. And then I remember we were all kind of getting thirsty because we were running out of water, and then we found this tiny little stream that we were all like praising Jesus that we found this stream, and we were bent down and filtering water out of it and stuff, and then we walk on and continue on from there, and you just are in this beautiful field of like flowers and things, and then we decided to make camp, and like that view is something that I can't even explain to people. And I think you said, even Greg, like, this is a more beautiful view than the original site I was planning to take us
Absolutely
to.
Was, yeah. And I mean, when we opted to go south on Route 28 and head on the Devil's Staircase, there was a fork that was about a third of a mile up that path that would have continued the same kind of trajectory and steepness, if you will, the pitch, the gain, but we missed that fork, and so we ended up going a much wider, and we ended up going much wider around. So it did add some overall length to our hike, but happy accident is completely acceptable. I definitely wouldn't call it a mistake. It was just, something that I kind of kept in mind for most of our, for doing these things, is that flexibility begets opportunity. Like, you're not gonna stumble into something amazing, surprising, without being flexible. If you stay rigid to your plan, if you stay rigid to your map, and it has to be this way, we have to go like this, then you always know what to expect, and you maintain a false sense of control then. And if you just realize, like, no, okay, so we paused. I think Joel and Josiah and I and somebody else standing there with Jonathan. I think, were you standing there with us too, or you were just a little bit up the trail with Ben maybe?
Yeah, Ben and I, we were halfway between you guys and then where Andy and the rest of the pack was. So we were trying to play a really bad game of telephone.
A really bad game of telephone, yeah. But we just paused right there, and it was one of those, like, okay, I'm going to be still for just a minute and just try to lean in and ask the Lord. Honestly, that's all I did was just pray. It was just like, okay, do we maintain this path, or do I need to call people back? Like, and it's not, okay, wrestling through the, I don't want to inconvenience people, but I also don't want to, like, if we go the wrong direction, we could end up in trouble here because I don't know where we're going then. And just leaning in, and I just felt like an overwhelming piece of just keep going. And we kept going, and it was awesome.
And interesting enough, there was a guy coming down Devil's Staircase that we ran into, and Greg just voiced to him, because he had come from that route, just voiced to him kind of the dilemma, and his thing was, if you're at this point, you might as well, if you've done this so far, you might as well keep on going, because otherwise you're probably adding just additional just additional length to your trip that
it's more trouble than it's worth.
The payoff is going to be better. The payoff is going to be better, and so that was.
But I completely agree with Andy. That is my favorite wilderness campsite I've encountered. I mean, I've been
there's a few of
places
us
around Alaska Basin.
A few of us are getting a tattoo because of it.
Oh
yeah, those coordinates.
Joel, you in?
I'm in. I am in. My wife is going to hear this episode, and I'm going to have to explain to her. But nevertheless, so for us, this trip, I had a 13-year-old boy doing this with me, and Josiah, number one, gosh, he's not good. I don't want to embarrass him, but it's just Josiah had to use the latrine, the non-existent latrine, while on
use a bush.
Yeah, well, on Devil's Staircase, which, guys, if you, going doing your business out in the wilderness, there's, it's got this particular challenge or whatever to it, but you get used to it. But doing it on the side of a mountain where you're like one miss, if you don't secure yourself properly, you could tip over. I just like, it's so funny, like giving your son like, hey bud, just like make sure you got good footing underneath of you.
Make sure you're planted.
Dude was a trooper, but when we got to the top of Devil's Staircase, I mean, I was having the conversation with him as we kind of kept on going. There were a few periods of time where he was physically really struggling, and there was this kind of this fear that was starting to take over him of like, because he did not know, and it was hard to articulate when our campsite was going to be, how much farther.
We didn't know,
because we didn't really know, right? Because we needed certain circumstances for what we needed for our campsite to be. Like we needed to find this spot. It was kind of like, well, that could be a little ways. So I can't tell him, hey, dude, just 30 more minutes, and we're gonna be there. If I would have said that would have been a lie. But having a conversation with him of, hey, we're going to go 20 feet at a time or 50 feet at a time. And if you need to stop after doing that, we'll do that. But we're going to keep on going. Going back is not an option, which he knew and understood logically, but he's like, and that kid, he got up, he did it. We got to the campsite. I've never been more relieved in my life as a parent to arrive somewhere with my kid. But that night we're laying in the tent, and guys, you all experienced this, and it's really hard to explain the way the wind came through that basin, and you would hear the wind off and along, like I can't really even fully explain it, kind of haunting a little bit. Like you'd hear the wind off in a long distance, and then it would just like kind of, the wind would almost echo through the canyon and then would get to you and then would swirl around and like head off in another direction. And I like, that was like Holy Spirit wind, man. That was like, I have no idea where it comes from, where it goes. It was, it was really, really amazing. But as we're laying there at night, I was like, so Dad, how much farther do we have to hike up tomorrow? And I was like, well, and I had at least some context of what we had to do. I was like, we just got to go this much farther up. About another 500 feet.
500 feet. Yep.
We had a couple miles to.
It was about 3/4 of a mile. 500 feet.
3/4 of a mile, 500 feet, and then it will be all down the way down. Yep. He's like, oh, okay. I think he fell asleep. Woke up an hour later. Dad, remind me again, how much farther do we have to? How much farther do we? This is another 500 feet up. It'll be all the way down, But that was, an anchor. That'll be an anchor memory for us. That's something hard that we did. That it's only he and I that did it, and that he had all of you guys, or those that were on that hike, cheering him on for that, and speaking just words of. That's what I really felt like there was that was the communal aspect of that, just the encouragement, cheering him on. When he got there, and I would say for a kid who just does not give himself enough credit for doing the stuff that he does, I just kept on saying, like, you should like have some pride that you are. It is okay for you to be like, yeah, I accomplished this, and just give yourself permission. It's not like you're not being humble to say that was a good thing that I did that, and I'm glad that I did. So, and
I'll say this: you both were carrying serious packs.
Yeah.
You were you had some ultralight guys here. You had I think Jonathan just had a bedroll tied to a backpack and a water container, and Greg was just like, you and Josiah were carrying some serious packs, and really,
I would do the hammock camping next time. I'll say that is now attractive to me in a new way.
So I want to touch base here a little bit. So we also have Dave, who didn't go on this hike, stayed back with Sebastiano and
Dustin and
Adam. And can you talk to me a little bit? So obviously you didn't do this hike, but what was the time like for you spending it with just those other gentlemen?
Yeah. So another opportunity to have some intimate conversation. And I think I I know Dustin would echo this as well as Sebastiano, that Adam, we really did not know prior to the hike, and that gave us an opportunity to interact with him, hear his story. I was just telling Greg Shank this today. I said I and several of us would love to go to Weeping Water, Nebraska, and see his church, and see what he does, his story of the ministry that he is doing in that community is amazing. And part of what we were doing is listening to his story and providing some support, hopefully some guidance and rejuvenation for him in that process. And we also chose to say, hey, we're going to go ride the ski hill lift, ski mountain lift, and get up to 10,000 feet, look over the top of that mountain with a fantastic view, and could see where you guys were ending up. So we took, again, the wimp way to the top and said, we got to 10,000 feet just like you did. But for a small fee, had a little bit of a ride to the top.
Worth it.
And so that was beautiful, beautiful views, and still gave us a little bit of perspective of where you guys were going. And we still felt included in that process.
Awesome.
And Adam was able to kind of give us the lay of the land and point out to where things were. And that was very helpful. So we had a very, very enjoyable 24 hours together and having some really phenomenal conversations and hearing each other's stories. So it was fun.
And Adam is such, I mean, it's evident to me, I'm sure it was especially evident to you guys. The dude is such a servant leader. Like I was, you meet those sort of people where you're like, whatever it is you're doing with your life, like I want more of, like, you are teaching just in his presence, teaching me more about God. I legitimately, I can think of no higher compliment to him than to say that. I was a man of few words but of deep words, and
clearly
I just was immensely grateful for him and all that he brought. So I'm so glad. I'm kind of jealous, quite honestly, that you guys got that time. That's really cool. Yeah.
I'm sure that I know that was meaningful to him. I know that was extremely valuable time for him to spend that with you and Dustin and Sebastiano, just having and I mean this in the most complimentary way, to spend some time with elders and have your ears, have your hearts in alignment with his, and just to give him support and encouragement. I know that was worth more than gold in his world. He's a really important person in my life, and I'm very glad that you guys were all able to meet him and be introduced to his ministry, and know that there's more of that to come.
And I will say it's in another small world. So in the water treatment industry, I became acquainted with some folks in Omaha, and I thought, no way does he know them. He knows them like the back of his hand. They are in the Weeping Water area. He's coached some of their kids.
Yep.
And it was like, no way.
Oh, that's funny.
This small world we live in is really, really cool, and God
That's
has a way of connecting us, which was fun too.
Yeah, I'm really.
And speaking
that's
of
awesome.
elders, it wasn't lost on me that everybody on that mountain overnight was younger than me. And so while that in some ways was a little intimidating, it challenged me, and it spurred me on to know that we're all going to get up this mountain no matter what our age is. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and to your credit, Greg, I had not made that connection until you just you just said that.
I never doubted your ability once.
Yeah,
I never
absolutely, man.
That was a brand new thought to me as well.
I think you were in the front pack, I think, up the Devil's Staircase. So you were way in front of us.
He's a hustler, man.
So aside from Josiah, then I don't know. So I don't know the whole gamut of the whole group of the people. Jonathan, were you the youngest outside of Josiah then who headed up?
Well,
or?
so Owen was
there.
Owen's
Yeah,
out
Owen,
there.
we
So
had Owen too.
Owen's 20, right? I think.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So yeah, I had forgotten about Owen, but I know Jonathan had some significant. You know, I know I've gotten some reflections from different people on their experience, and I know Jonathan had some thoughts on the Devil's Staircase and the Mount Meek campsite as well. That those. I don't know if you'd like to share anything here before.
Yeah, sure. I think actually, yeah, besides Josiah and Owen, I was probably next in line for youngest there. I think I just edged Jonathan Worsler as next youngest. So yeah, Devil's Staircase was its own challenge, but I think someone else said on here, you just keep plugging along. You know, you've kind of got these doubts in your head, you know, can I do this? Can I do this? And before you know it, you're at the top. It's kind of amazing how without realizing it, your body just does what it needs to do, and it gets to the top. And then yeah, the campsite and the trek to the campsite. Oh my goodness. And that field of wildflowers that we walked through, that was probably easy half a mile, almost a mile long. I might be exaggerating, where you're just walking along. You've got this giant cliff face to the right of you, and to the left of you is the open canyon, and you're in the middle of this field of just nothing but wildflowers, all of them in bloom. I don't know how lucky we got in season, but all these flowers were in bloom, and you got every color under the sun there. And it was hot. There were bugs there, but what struck me in that moment, walking that probably last mile up to the campsite, was just the enormity of the silence that was there.
Yeah,
there was no sound of cars, no sound of generators, no sound of anything else out there. It was you and the sound of your footsteps walking in that field, and
your elevated pulse pounding,
and you're dancing and hopping and popping.
The quiet cursing of the people who decided, hey, we should do this trail.
And Jonathan, you just made me think of this. Greg, did I hear the numerical variety of wildflowers in that region was someone said a number I thought I heard, but it's like staggering, like the number of different plants, like flower species are there. I believe
it, but I don't know the specifics of that.
I'm not even.
And we definitely hit a very narrow, probably a 2-week window to see that many in bloom all at once.
Yellows, purples, pinks, reds. All
whites,
oh my gosh,
whites, orange, there was blue. I mean, it was everything.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
Yeah,
I was with Jonathan there in that just like when you got to the top, when you were out of the canyon, and it's like, okay, we're just going to walk until we find a good campsite now. But I did notice that I didn't feel a sense of urgency to find a campsite. I just wanted to walk slowly through all of those flowers. Like, I just wanted to take that a little slower.
Because Greg didn't have a 13-year-old boy with him going, how much farther? I don't know, Josiah. Go ask Greg.
I think it was cool too, because as we found that campsite, I know that like Ian and I were ahead, and we kept saying, oh, there's a bunch of trees, because the thing we had to take into consideration was the fact that we had 8 hammockers with us, and so we had to find trees for these hammockers, and we'd find a bunch of trees, and we'd get there, and then they were either too dense and also had a bunch of undergrowth. And so then we finally found one, and it was just the most beautiful campsite ever.
I mean, one of the things that we had to take into consideration for that trail was, I'm not sure where we're going to make camp. We're just going to have to collectively recognize we have hit a limit for the day, and this will be good. But you still need factors in play. You needed water. You have to have water nearby. There's got to be, and you want it to be living water. You don't want it to be a lake. You want it to be living water nearby. So we have living water nearby. We need some flat ground for our tent campers, and we need trees for our hammockers. And we just kind of kept passing patch after patch after patch of trees and going like, man, there's got to be one up here somewhere, until we got far enough ahead. And it's like, well, we're just going to keep walking until we get it. And the one that we found, really just couldn't have asked for anything better. Really couldn't have. It's still, I mean, it will absolutely be one of my favorite places that we've ever overnighted. I could have spent a couple days there.
Same.
And have been very happy.
Yep. Very, very cool. So when we wake up the next day, and we're gonna head on our way down, and Greg, remind me, what is what is the official name of this loop? That is there like apart from the number 28, 27?
Yeah, well, Devil's Staircase was technically from that point on the Y where 27 and 28 diverge to where it terminates at the Teton Crest Trail, which was the highest point.
Okay.
That whole stretch of trail, that probably 4 miles, is the Devil's Staircase Trail.
Okay. Yep. Gotcha. And then, so as we're then heading our way down, there's a point at which you feel like from that valley that you're in, you enter another world.
You do, the Alaska Basin,
which is
wilderness,
which is just between the rock formations and some of the small glaciers that we're walking by there as we're entering into that phase,
and the lakes and the river
and the rivers, and then the rock formations. But what, an 11-mile descent, I think.
It was
roughly.
10 from where we hit our highest point of 9860. It was 10 miles from there back to camp.
Yeah, which I will say, I really felt that trail at the very end should have been a couple miles shorter than what I remember. I remember it being a couple miles shorter. Jonathan, you were in my group. I remember like each bend we would go around, I'm like, certainly I'm going to see that end of trail sign. It's got to be there.
Nothing was more disheartening than getting down into that one section of the valley, and we see a sign, and we think, oh, great, it's a sign, and it says campsite, 7.7 miles.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Oof.
But again, a beautiful hike down. It's interesting. Hiking down at that grade, a steady grade, levels out at some points. I mean, as you're going through the forest and things, that's a level. But for that distance, you're using a different set of muscles down. And
your toes are getting jammed into the front of your shoes.
Calves of steel.
Yeah, all of that. And so there's a different, and I've just said, the last mile and a half of the trail out, I lost all feeling in my feet. I just didn't, it was like they were there in as much as I knew I had to move them to keep going forward. But like, that's how I felt. And then we were done. So it was fine.
Well, so I think Marty, Jason, and Greg were all in the first group to come out of the canyon. Is that right? Was it the three of you all together with Ben?
I think Eric and Owen were first.
Oh,
the first
true.
two.
Yeah, Eric and Owen were first.
And then we were the next group.
Yeah.
And then I think I was third group, and I think that was amazing too, to come out. And as you come out of the parking lot, because our campsite there, where Dave and the rest of the group was positioned, like, it was cool because we turned the corner and they stood up and like clap for us, and it was just an amazing feeling of going, there's someone cheering you on.
Yep.
Like, even though like obviously they weren't with us along the side, they knew how hard this was for us, and it was cool to see them and their support.
Yep. When we were coming through, so a search party came out for The Last of Us. Just I don't know how far. Not terribly far up the trail, but they came up the trail, and as we were coming in, and Adam came and he just looked to me and goes, "Give me your pack," and I go, "Is this you asking or are you telling me?" He goes, "I've been where you've been before, and I'm taking your pack," which was great. But I think getting to the end of that, we had our group of four had an exciting bear encounter. Up a few miles out from the end of the trail. We're walking along, and I started seeing like bear scat on the trail, like every 15 feet or whatever, and I was just like, we are going to see it. Like, there's going to be one, and boy, oh boy, it's part of the challenge of you're tired, but you're trying to
you got to stay aware of your surroundings.
Stay aware of your surroundings, and all of a sudden, 25 feet in front of me, this huckleberry bush just starts shaking, and I'm in front. I did one of that. It's like, almost like a cartoon sort of thing of like, stop! Like everybody kind of like crashes into each other. You know, we're all just hiking along. Everybody just kind of like bumps into each other, and yeah, and this bear just looked out, probably a female. It was a little bit smaller, but not that I care because it's a bear. It's on the trail, and it's just took a couple steps toward us, and we just started making our big bear noises. And then walks up the hill a little bit and just sits right down and kind of watches us as we, like Jonathan. I just thought, like, again, unconcerned by our presence there, well, whatsoever. I thought, but like
it could have cared less.
Yeah.
And what was so funny about that moment is, we were all, I think, you were in front, Joel, and then, we stop, we see the bear, and then there's this moment where few seconds passed by as the four of us in this group realized none of us had any bear spray.
But you know who did, Jonathan? Greg, who was just up the trail a little bit farther. Best guide ever.
I'd already cleared the bears out of my area.
He was no problem. No, it was just, again, a reminder. Like the hike wasn't over until the hike was over, right? Like there is this definitely the sense of remaining appropriately vigilant and aware, through the end, and that's why you are never so glad is when it's done. It's really done.
Yeah.
And I went and put my feet in a river that was maybe 50 degrees if you're lucky, and it was.
Well, Andy had
wonderful.
laid in the snow that had formed that river the day before.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Yeah. That's.
So I got to hike with Greg for a little while because he was with Ian and Andy and I, and we had a nice leisurely nap on a big flat white rock that was wonderful. And
how nice for you.
It was nice that we had to try to figure out how do we. I mean, it's interesting going along the trail when you realize that the group has kind of split up, and you go, okay, at what point do we stop and wait? And I think that was an interesting kind of moment for us because we wanted to find water,
right?
But we also wanted to rest ourselves, but not rest long enough to get stiff. And that was probably about halfway. I mean, we were probably only about halfway right there. I would say maybe 5 miles down. So I don't know if Greg had any reflections on that moment because there's a nice picture that Andy got of us all laying there too.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of an interesting, dilemma. I was out of water. I was drank way more water than I normally drink hiking. I had 3 liters gone in a heartbeat. And I'm normally not the person that likes stopping, partially because of my age. I get stiff really quick, but it felt really good to lay on that rock and just kind of chill a little bit and get some rest. But then, the dilemma is like, okay, I'm out of water. Do we hike back to somebody has a filter? Do we just keep sitting here? Do we press forward and just kind of working through all that? But at the same time, not getting too stressed out because it felt pretty good just sitting on that rock and just chilling and looking at the sky. So that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think at that point, even Marty was still behind, maybe was in the group behind us. So when we all gathered up together, that was, I think, the last time that the entire group was all together on that trail. When we got around maybe a quarter mile down and we had the cascade, and there was a cascade and the stream in there, and filled up on water, had some trail mix.
Somebody
and then I think
fell in.
Yes, a couple people. I think a couple people maybe fell into the water there. But I think that was the last time that everyone was together, was probably right at that halfway point. And there was a refueling of, okay, so we got out some food, everybody recharged on water, and then it was kind of, now it was kind of right then, it was a decision internally, maybe unspoken, but an internal decision of, and now we're going to push for the camp. Like we're pushing for the campground now. Like we're putting into another gear right now, and we're now pushing for the campground.
Yep. And then we broke camp, and like once we spent the night at the campground.
Yeah.
And then we broke camp the next day, and those who flew, those who drove back home, and
I took, and by the way, full disclosure, I took the pass back through because
So did we.
I was like I'm curious to this and boy oh boy, we were just as we were following a guy. It was carrying an Airstream down that or whatever, and I was like, Josiah, I want you to keep an eye on the rear axle because I think it might light on fire on the way to. You could smell it. You could smell it. And but that was an interesting experience in of itself. But yeah, there's and I managed to record a fake history over on the western Pierre's Hole. Why is everything a hole out there? I mean, it's
Just
Jackson
another name
Hole.
for valley.
Yeah, you could say valley. Pierre's Valley sounds lovely. Pierre's Hole, questionable. Anyway,
so we come to the end of our trip. I want to hear from each of you. Just one final thought on the trip itself. So let's start with Dave.
So I still have to come back to kind of the spiritual highlight was St. Pat, or was Old Pat. And I want to throw Greg Shank the compliment of following the Holy Spirit's leading and a group of men out in the middle of Teton valleys singing praises to God. That clearly was an awesome moment. And for those that know my situation, that was a healing moment.
Good.
That meant a ton. And not knowing what to expect out of this trip, not just going eyes wide open. That was the ticket. And I thank each of you guys there, each of you here, and all the others that aren't with us to making that a special holy moment. And from the music to the prayers to the comments to the conversation, and for Greg for leading us to there, and for your inspiration and guidance in the words to give us those moments. So that was the highlight.
All right, moving on to Jonathan.
Yeah, final thoughts. For anybody that has the opportunity to take this trip, go for it. I was kind of invited last minute, I want to say. The trip had already been decided on, and I was invited to come along. And throughout the first whole part of the trip, I was kind of wondering, why in the world me? Why me? Why was I invited? Why am I here? And slowly, as that trip went on, I discovered my own reason for being there. And for anybody else who's kind of questioning, well, it's not for me. It's not something I would want to do. I had those questions going into this thing, and coming out of that trip, I am so glad I went. The opportunity for growth, for healing, and for discovering your own reason, you find that along the way. You don't have to go there with a predetermined, I'm going to accomplish this. You figure it out.
Marty, what about yourself?
Well, I would kind of agree with Jonathan on some of those things. You don't have to have a reason why right away, but for me, it was just I'll be honest. I didn't want to go because I didn't want to have that challenge, because I know that I would do it because I have to do it in a weird way. But I wanted to go because being in a group of men is a very healing. It's what we need to do as men. We need to do more of that. And sometimes we just get caught in life and we're kind of stuck, and we don't do enough of the man things. And so Greg, I was very thankful for you for leading us as a group of men, and letting the men kind of work their way on their own personal level. There was no real big push to, you have to accomplish X, Y, and Z. And so it was just great to have conversation on the trail with so many of these guys, and it's a worthwhile trip. Whoever has the opportunity to do it, grab onto it.
Greg, Shank?
Trying to find a high among highs is very difficult. We've talked about Old Pat. We talked about the Alaska Basin. We talked about Devil's Staircase. We talked about the camaraderie with the guys. It's just so hard to pick the pinnacle moment among pinnacle moments. And yet I am still so drawn to the first day's devotion book on Thursday morning. And, Psalms 121, 1 through 8. I will look up to the mountains. Does my strength come from the mountains? No, my strength comes from God, who made heaven and earth and mountains. And, Greg put together a great trip. We got a great devotional book, and I worked through all those, but I still couldn't get past day one. And as we tried to find strength in and of ourselves to make this physical challenge, I was continually reminded and broke down on the trail many times to say, no, my strength doesn't come from these mountains, and I will call upon the Lord. And so probably the highlight was just starting right out, bang, that verse. Greg just had a great way to provide verses that were just geared towards me. It felt like me, and to us as men, that we feel like we need to provide our own strength. We need to have the answers. We need to have control. We're supposed to lead our families. We're supposed to do all these things. And it's not of our own strength. And so day one's devotion, I couldn't hardly get past it. I didn't need the rest of the booklet because I was still stuck trying to process day one. And, I still remember that one of the challenges for day one's devotion was to draw a map of your journey of life. I still don't know how to start drawing. The pencil's still in my hand. And how do you even bring that into words? So I'll just stop here and just say the pinnacle moment of pinnacle moments. I'm going to come back to that scripture verse from day one and learning the lesson that my strength doesn't come from me. And sometimes you have to go to the Tetons to find that out.
Jason Weir, what about you?
For me, unplugging, slowing down, and just taking time to share and other men's stories and to share my story was just great. It's a recharge and a reset for my soul that God needed to give to me. So that was great, that part.
Joel?
All great moments. I will say there's the first morning we woke up and we're at our campsite, and we're in the morning, the pink light of the sunrise hits the range, and we had a relatively clear morning that morning because there had been some haze and things like that. And I'm standing up on the hill that's kind of over up above our campsite a little bit, and just watching this, and a good gift from God. Josiah walks up that hill, and you gotta know my son. It's not par for the course. I'm standing there having a moment with the Lord, and the kid walks up and just puts his arms around me, and doesn't say a word, just puts his arms around me, and we just see the mountains there together, and I will just treasure that forever. That is it, just as good as it gets for me, and it's kind of that feels like that set the theme for our togetherness in the midst of this journey with all of you guys and doing it with you. It really set the theme and the precedent for me and kind of what we experience of like, oh, God's giving us this opportunity and we're connecting in a unique way in the midst of it. Because I'll be honest with you, there's a little bit of stress, guys. Like when you're like, I don't want this. I don't want to put more pressure on this trip than is due to make it do certain things or have it whatever. And God just showed up, just absolutely showed up, and it was exactly the right thing at the right time, and really, really grateful. And then we had a couple days in the car together too on the way back to process some more things and all of that, and mostly I just wanted to sleep in the back of the car, but don't blame him. But yeah, that definitely for me. Thank you.
For me, it was the waking up, getting out of my hammock, and sitting wherever I was at. So whether it be right by the lake or in the mountains on the overnight trip or in the campground, sitting and doing my devotions with God amongst that beauty. Like there's nothing like you kind of said, Joel. I have a great picture of it on my phone of the pink light just hitting the mountains, and yeah, for me that was it. So, Greg, what about you?
That's hard. That's hard. I mean, for me, maybe honestly, I think the last day, Monday, it would have been 2 weeks ago tomorrow. Like for me, it was a great like the adventure was not being there and doing the trails. I mean, we did multiple trails that I had not done before, many trails that I have done many times before. It was the great adventure for me was, do I have what it takes to do this with you guys?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I've done this with multiple, smaller groups, 6 men, 8 men, 9 men, 11 men, but 17. That was, for me, that was the big adventure. The big challenge was, has what I have envisioned, did I oversell anything? Did I cast a vision that is within the step of the Spirit, and getting to the last day and seeing the smiles and seeing the satisfaction, hearing the stories. For me, that was the moment of deep fulfillment. Was, oh wow, these guys really got it. Like I think these guys all actually got it. That was extremely meaningful for me.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we definitely want to say to all of our guests, Brother Greg, thank you so much. And Dave, Greg, Jonathan, Marty, Jason, and all of our other co-journeyers, we want to say thank you guys so much for a great experience. Hey, Dudes and Dads podcast listeners, you want to head over to dudesanddads.com. We got show notes and previous episodes, merchandise. Get yourself some swag. Dudes and Dads podcast at gmail.com. If you want to shoot us an email, we'd love to hear from you, future show ideas or some helpful feedback. That's always great too. Like and subscribe on the socials. That's good. And until next time, guys, we wish you grace
and peace.